It's the highest number of forest fires in the Brazilian Amazon since records began in 2013. Just this year, officials have recorded more than 74,000 fires there. It's an 84% increase compared to the same period last year, according to Brazil's National Institute for Space Research. The blazes have produced large clouds of smoke, choking some cities in the region, and leading the state of Amazonas to declare a state of emergency earlier this month. Environmentalists say the increase in wildfires is due to increased deforestation, an increase they largely blame on President Jair Bolsonaro. They've criticized the Brazilian leader for his calls to expand mining, logging, and agriculture in the Amazon.
One of the major theoretical concepts that is involved in this intercultural issue is the muted group theory, which is defined by Cray-Marie as the asymmetrical relationship in language between two groups of people, where the submissive one is made to feel less powerful than the dominant one because their voice and opinion is ignored. The muted group theory was created by Edwin and Shirley Ardner in 1975 when they realized that women's voices were being muted and were seen as inferior against the voices of men. This was because, at the time, the men were the breadwinners of the household and women had to rely on them. So in order to be heard, the women had to change their language to the dominant form, and then their opinions could be considered. The muted group theory is not just concerned with gender differences, but other marginalized groups involved with class, age, sexuality, and race. This theory is relevant to the Amazon fires because the marginalized voices of the indigenous people of Brazil are being muted by the dominant group, which in this case is the Brazilian government, but more specifically the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, has been previously accused of encouraging the farmers to clear the land for mining and agriculture, and has opposed any request to protect the rainforest. Earlier in the year, Bolsonaro and his administration team pledged to open up the rainforest for more industrial development, but they are now denying any involvement in the outbreak of wildfires across the Amazon. Bolsonaro attempted to stop the fire by deploying the army to help stop the blaze, but only because the European Union threatened to put an end to a trade deal with several countries in South America, including Brazil. In Brazil's local news, it is constantly publicized that Bolsonaro has no involvement in the wildfires and that the fires are spreading due to natural circumstances. Brazil's Minister of the Environment had tweeted that the fires had spread so quickly due to the dry weather and wind. But even during the driest season, multiple fires do not happen naturally in the Amazon rainforest. Globally, most media outlets suspect Bolsonaro for the fires and believe all his attempts to help the rainforest are to save face in order to appear innocent. The Brazilian government have total control over the angle of the news story that gets broadcasted across the country, as they are the gatekeepers of the media. They do this to control the topic of conversation and to only broadcast information about their viewpoint of a story. This is a form of muted group theory, as the government is not allowing news outlets to report any side of the issue but theirs, and are muting any other discussion on the topic that does not align with their views. The locals are not given a platform to share their opinion, as their voices are not considered important. Cray-Marie explains that the muted group theory suggests that just because these marginalized voices cannot be heard does not mean that they do not have a lot to say. It is because they usually do not have that much power to voice their opinions without getting into trouble. The locals of Brazil have a lot of opinions on the issue, but are often too scared to say anything about it, as they are afraid of the consequences that could happen if the government finds out. Because of this fear, they are being muted by the dominant group and are constrained on what they can say. When the fires had first started, the voices and opinions of the local people of Brazil were not publicly broadcasted. Now that the fires have become a huge global issue, the media is more concerned with the feelings of the indigenous people that live in and around the rainforest. There are several articles that include quotes from the locals, offering them a platform to voice their opinions, so they are no longer muted. Although the locals are now sharing their opinions publicly through media, there is still not that much coverage on it, and the voices of the government are dominating the media. So although they are no longer completely silent, the voices of the indigenous people are still being overruled by people in dominant positions. It is difficult to predict when the fires started, as they are common in the rainforest. But since the wildfires are so common, there is usually never any media coverage on each fire that starts. Many people across the world did not hear about the issue until the Amazon had been on fire for at least 2 weeks. And even then, they did not hear about it through television broadcasts or newspapers, but instead through social media. Cray-Marie explains that the submissive group tends to be disrespected by the dominant group, as they preserve their dominance through belittling the voice of anyone they considered unprivileged. The theory suggests that major media outlets did not broadcast this story right away, because they wanted to assert their dominance and not offer a platform for the indigenous people of Brazil to speak. They were not concerned with the opinions of the people that were most affected by the fires.